Hi, I'm Jerry from PressureWasher.net, manufacturer of Sirocco vacuums and Bulldog Pro pressure washers. I'm going to show you an example of why we deliberately make things last a long time and what that means. This is one of our vertical version 8 gallon a minute 4,000 psi systems. It has the specially designed for us pump that does the full 8 gallons a minute 4,000 psi by AR. This is plumbed to be tank fed, obviously. We've got a great big feed line here with a shutoff, so we can of course check the water filter. What's on the other side, it has a great big bowl type inline strainer that has a garden hose fitting on the end, so you can pressure feed the inlet manifold with this valve off and make sure there's no leaks. Whenever you're troubleshooting a pressure washer that's tank fed, you need to be able to pressure feed the inlet of the system to make sure there's no leaks. You might as well stop troubleshooting if you don't know whether you've got the perfect water supply on a system that's giving you pressure problems. This system is set up to be simple to troubleshoot. So we've got dual feed going to each side of the head of the pump. It's 8 gallons a minute. We've got 1-inch feed lines going to each side. We've got 1.25-inch line coming in from this short line from the water tank. So this thing has its best chance to live a long time. It's always the water seal farthest away from the water supply that wears out first. So by feeding both sides of the pump, we're making it last a little bit longer. And by having large feed lines, there's less turbulence in the line. That's 1 inch to each side of the head may seem like a major overkill, but look at it this way. If the water is flowing slowly through each of the transition connections and there's less turbulence in the line, there's less likelihood of a leak. This thing's going to bounce down the road for the rest of its life. So how do you make a machine bulletproof for bouncing down the road for the rest of its life? You think these things through. You've got to plan the outcome. Okay? We've planned for the outcome to be this is going to have less opportunity for failure, and you have a more reliable system. This has a pressure gauge that'll tell us the truth of what this thing's actually doing at the head of the pump. If you have a pressure gauge on your wand for testing purposes or setup purposes, and you see that you've only got a couple thousand psi at the gun, but you still have 4,000 psi at the pump, that's going to indicate that you've got a flow restrictor in between, like a clogged coil or something like that. Or maybe you forgot to take the chemical injector off from the last job. Chemical injectors are flow restrictors. We need to have a truth indicator. So we have truth indicators on our pump systems. We also have a truth indicator on the outlet of our heater. That's a temperature gauge. If you don't know what it's actually doing, then how can you know what the troubleshooting is or what you're getting at the job site? If you're trying to do a stripper job where you're removing paint from a surface or removing sealant from paver tiles, you need to be able to turn that heat up. But if you don't know what the temperature is you have, then how do you know what you're doing? How do you know whether you're going to win the race if you don't know if you're making the right turn? You know, little things like this are important to your profitability on a job. So we give you things like this. We've got a heater system here that's plumbed with indicator lights for simple troubleshooting. I mean, we've given you the best opportunity to see exactly where the problem is when a problem arises. These things don't live forever, so it's nice to be able to do some troubleshooting really quickly with a fuel pressure gauge on your heater. So we know whether you've got a fuel supply, whether the pump is turning the right speed, whether the pump is actually pumping, whether it's making the actual pressure. I mean, we're eliminating like an hour of troubleshooting for you. All you got to do is look at the gauge and verify that you got fuel pressure. You got fuel pressure, the same pressure you had before. It's not pegging the scale at 200 psi out of control, and it actually says exactly what it normally says. Troubleshooting on that side of the system is done. You know your problem is someplace else. So if you don't have heat, you know, you can look at whether this light goes on, that light goes on, or the other light goes on, and troubleshooting is simple. You know where you have and don't have control and power. Real simple. We also give you silly little things like simplistic electrical. We've got fuses on each side of the control circuit so that you have protection from short circuits. If it's going to bounce down the road for the rest of its life and things are eventually going to come loose as they do, then Wouldn't it be nice to blow a fuse instead of like fry the whole electrical system? These are important things. You'll also notice beefy wire. All the wiring in here is oversized by 2 sizes. The manufacturer may think it's okay to put a 16 gauge wire on a high voltage igniter, but if you don't get 12 gauge wire to it, then you may be starving it for supply and limiting its lifespan. We beef this stuff up so that you get the most reliability possible out of a Bulldog Pro heater or a Bulldog Pro pressure washer. We are not cutting corners on this stuff. We use rubber-backed washers on hardware so that they don't back out, not just lock washers. Sometimes rubber washers are better. In this case, we don't want things to rattle. Okay. Speaking of hardware, I think we're still the only manufacturer that puts an actual earthquake bracket on heaters. You know, these machines have sheet metal screws holding the heaters down from the factory. That ain't enough. This thing's gonna bounce down the road for the rest of its life. This thing has an earthquake bracket on each side of the heater holding the top all the way down to the frame with grade 8 hardware. We're not fooling around. The bolts going through the floor of this truck are grade 8 hardware. We ship them to you with the machine so you can install it with the right hardware. We put vibration isolation underneath the engine systems. You can see better on this side. There's rubber underneath, there's rubber on top. The hardware is not completely compressing it, so we can have up and down vibration isolation, so we're not shaking the hell out of the truck. You know, a lot of the machines that are bolted down to trailers with hard set hardware, without the rubber on top, for example, if you shake the floor of your trailer or the walls of your trailer with your engine system, you're making an amplifier out of the doggone trailer. You got the noisiest engine on the planet because it shakes the hell out of your system. It's not necessary to do that. When you buy a Bulldog Pro pressure washer, it comes with the right mounting hardware. It comes with the instructions on how to put it in. This is not rocket science. This is bulletproofing. We care about the equipment that you're getting. You know, and on the heater, for example, we silicone the whole insulation around the inlet so that fire can't come out eventually and burn your wires. We know it'll eventually fail. We don't want it to fail like that. So we silicone seal this so that it can never have that problem. You'll never have to have the downtime that other people don't want you to know is going to happen. We're not in the business of addicting you to going to a service center every 4 months and spending $500 like clockwork. That's not our style. We want you to call us up in 4 or 5 years and say, "Hey, Jerry, we need another machine. We're making so much money with this one. We want another one just like this." That's the phone call I want. I don't want to hear you're at a service center spending $5 while somebody guessworks through figuring out what's wrong with your machine. We want you to be able to do your own troubleshooting. We want you to have the bulletproofing in advance. I mean, it's hard to think of everything, but we try. The battery that we recommend for our heaters is a sealed lead acid battery. This little garden tractor sized wheelchair battery will outlive a deep cycle marine battery by like 3 or 5 times. It's only $69.50 for this battery. It's powerful enough to start a 500 horsepower race car engine. Oh yeah, that's what they use in off-road race cars instead of a bigger battery that doesn't do anything more. But what this is doing for us is giving you a more reliable 12-volt system for your heater. We make the most reliable 12-volt heater systems on the planet. It's because of the way we do the wiring. It's because of the way we do the controls. It's because of the way we do the safety devices. Nobody else uses a redundant temperature control on the inlet of the heater so it can never get super hot from no water flowing and the heater stuck on. They don't blow up like other machines do. So the outcome is we got machines out there that are 28 and 30 years old with the original heater coils. It just never had to blow up. So we try to help. We give you real controls that really work. We give you safety devices. Yes, there's a pressure relief valve right here on the inlet of the heater. There's also a pressure relief valve on the head of the pump. You got to protect both ends of the system. We don't ask you if you want it. You're going to get it. If you buy a hot water pressure washer from Bulldog Pro, it's going to have the right stuff on it. If we install it for you, it's going to be installed correctly with big, beefy, free-flowing, less turbulent water supply. We're going to have the bypass line going back to the holding tank in a position where you can see how much water is bypassing when you're doing troubleshooting. Don't you want to know where the problem is if you lose pressure? Well, if you look in the water tank and see whether there's water bypassing from the unloader when the gun is open, that tells you whether it's the unloader's fault or not for you losing pressure. Okay? We don't want you to have a clogged float valve on your water tank when you're trying to fill the water tank and have the float valve shut off properly. We put a filter in line of your hose reel feeding that water tank so that we're not putting debris into the face of the float valve. That gives you a reliable float valve. How long can they last? Well, they can last a really long time if they don't get crap in their face. Go figure. Anyway, pressurewasher.net is the place to go. You're going to get the right stuff. It's going to last. You'll be able to enjoy the rapid elimination of downtime if you do run into downtime. And gee, you're going to make money with it in between. Next, we're going to have to do some bulletproofing on that. We do upgrades. We have kits for upgrades, like on 12-volt systems. We're even going to have an upgrade kit for turning a 115-volt heater that wastes engine horsepower on a generator just to run a heater. So if you want to upgrade your heater to a 12-volt system, we'll be setting up a kit for doing that. You'll find that at pressurewasher.net. Check us out. Have a great one. Hope you're making money.